Giant has just released the latest version of its incredibly popular endurance model, the Defy. The now 5th generation of the bike ushers in 3 new frame sets with some pretty bold claims with supposed improvements in both weight and comfort. Giant are even claiming that the most affordable version of the new Defy outperforms the previous generation's top-of-the-range model. Clearly, there is a lot to unpack here, and at the end of the video, I'll be sharing my first ride impressions. So, let's dive in. In stark contrast to Specialized, that has continued its Future Shock front-end suspension system, Giant relies on functional simplicity to provide compliance and comfort. It says that after working with teams and professional riders and more normal people, like the staff at Giant, it decided that it wanted to continue its focus on developing its past innovations. This is why the new Defy now has a new D-Fuse seat post and a new D-Fuse handlebar and stem, which are both designed to smooth off the ride without adding any extra weight. It's not just the bits Giant has bolted to the frame itself that it says will help with comfort, but Giant says that the drop seat stays and the brand new fork also go a long way to help cushion the ride. After reading that this bike was developed alongside professionals, I did get a little bit worried because this is one of the rare scenarios where it does make more sense to actually be developing alongside real people. From a professional rider's point of view, anything that isn't an out-and-out race bike will feel comfortable by virtue of the fact that it has some basic compliance properties, like wider tyres and a slightly more relaxed geometry. Even thoroughbred race bikes are now being used on the harshest of Belgian classics thanks to their newfound versatility. So, to my mind, having a pro's input isn't actually the most valuable thing, which is why I was pretty relieved to hear that after speaking to Giant, they did also include a lot of normal people within their development process. That being said, the new D-Fuse seat post is claimed to provide 7mm of deflection, while the frame sets, when paired with the new seat posts, are said to offer 42% more compliance compared to the previous generation. If true, that is a fairly impressive increase, and whether you're a pro or not, that should result in a fairly plush ride. There have also been some updates to the geometry, and they're changes that you may not associate with an endurance bike, because the new Defy features a lower head tube by 9mm and now has a slightly longer reach by 5mm. So in theory, this new bike is actually slightly more performance focused. From stock, the bikes will still have a very long steerer tube, so if you want to maintain a high stack, then you can. It's because of these changes in geometry that this bike has actually become a whole lot more interesting to me, because quite frankly, I love a racy road bike. So I'm very excited to experience these changes and see if they really have made the bike a little bit more dynamic. There is, of course, one other metric which looks to be fairly impressive, that being the amount of weight that Giant claims to have slashed out of the frame sets. It says that the new top-of-the-range Defy Advanced SL tips the scales at 785 grams, a full 293 grams lighter than the previous range-topping model. That's nearly 20% lighter. That's a really good amount of weight to save from a frame, and it brings the Defy right alongside some of the best road bikes on the market. In fact, when I put the bike behind me on our scales, it came in a smidge over 7 kilos. What makes the weight even more impressive is that this is an endurance bike, and it's because of this that you actually have to excuse a little bit of my skepticism. Until I get a chance to ride this bike a little bit later on in this video, I'll be keen to see if the Defy can deliver on its compliance claims, and if it really is as comfortable as Giant says it is. Bikes this light aren't always that comfortable in my experience. I'd love to be wrong, because if Giant have cracked it, then this could be a real winner. But what's even more impressive is that the base level Defy Advanced is also lighter than the previous top of the range bike by a claimed 117 grams. It, however, does show how heavy the previous version of the Defy was, if it came in at around a kilo. Now, I'm not suggesting that Giant will have made it purposefully heavy so that they can remove weight for the new generation, but that is certainly a great headline that they've achieved. The new Defy isn't just about compliance and weight though. Those new bars do more than just smooth off the tarmac. They're now bang up to date with full cable integration, and the drops of the bars themselves feature a flare of 8 degrees, which is great for descending and just generally having more control. Of course, this wouldn't be a brand new 2024 endurance bike without more tyre clearance, and don't worry, Giant has delivered. It has now been up to 38mm from the previous generation's 35. You do get Giant's own 32mm tyres fitted from stock. However, these are something that personally I would switch out pretty quick if I were a customer of this bike. The frames also include integrated fender mounts. All of the bikes come with 2 composite bottle cages that have been designed specifically for the Defy. And you can see how the cage here on the seat tube wraps around the front mech. And on the Advanced SL and Advanced Pro builds, you will get carbon hookless wheels. On a more subjective level, I think the new Defy does look a whole lot better than its predecessor. I always struggled with the look of the old one. It looked clumsy and unbalanced, to my eye at least. But this new bike certainly does have a good go at rectifying the sins of its past. I still believe that there are better looking endurance bikes on the market, and that this new Defy is slightly cookie cutter with its drop seat stays and chunky head tube and down tube. But I really cannot complain when it's those very features that are responsible for some of my favourite performance characteristics of most modern bikes. There's one other thing that I find really interesting, and that's just quite how slim the top tube is. It's something we're seeing more and more on new bikes. The new Factor Ostro Vam and the Orbea Orca both have similar looking top tubes, and both also have lightweight at the heart of what they do. So perhaps this is something that we're going to start seeing more manufacturers do as a way to drop weight. On to cost, and here are the worldwide prices. Bikes start at a Tiagra level build and then finish with SRAM Red. Surprisingly though, there is no Dura-Race offering. Giant has said that it was only ever going to offer one of the two, and it decided to go with Red thanks to the gearing options that it opens up. This is also one of the first bikes on the market to be offered with the brand new mechanical 105 12-speed group set, and that bike lands at either $3,000 or just shy of £2,700. I think there's certain models in the range that make more sense than others. Personally, I wouldn't opt for either of the two top-end bikes, when you can find the brand new Canyon Enduro-Race with Dura-Race for £9,000, or the top spec Cannondale Synapse for the same price. Some may say that the Cadex wheels found on the top-end Defy are better than those found on either the Enduro-Race or the Synapse, and I would be inclined to agree. The frame technology of the Defy is also a contributing factor, but for the majority of riders, I think the Synapse and the Enduro-Race offer the bulk of what people are looking for from a range-topping bike, and shelling the extra £2,500 might be hard to do for what may feel like an incremental improvement. There's 2 models that really stand out to me, that being either the Advanced Pro 2 or the Advanced Pro Zero. The former has carbon wheels, the mid-tier frame, and the new 105 12-speed mechanical group set, but sadly only appears to be available in the UK and France, at least for the time being. And the latter has a full Ultegra 12-speed Di2 group set, a giant power meter, and a mid-tier frame, and some better carbon wheels than that of the former. Overall, I think Giant has done a pretty decent job. They have made the bike lighter, it claims to have made it more comfortable, and given its lineage as a very popular endurance platform, I'm inclined to have a small amount of trust in their claims at this early stage. And to my eye at least, the bike looks a whole lot better too. Some good features have been included, like the fender mounts, the bottle cage inclusion, and more space for wider tyres. When you pair all of that with the new bar and stem, it's a bike which has been brought up to modern standards, or should I say, expectations. And it looks like a pretty worthwhile successor to the much loved Defy platform. Now though, it's time for my first ride impressions. So, first ride impressions. I've just come into a little lay-by where it's a bit shadier because it's quite hot out today. But I've had the bike, as you can see behind me, out in the lanes today. I've been taking up some kind of longer drags, up some climbs, just to kind of get a good feel of, you know, what it's actually like to ride. I think let's start off first with geometry, because like I said earlier, the stack has been reduced by 9mm and the reach has actually gone out by, I think, about 5mm or so. I think that's definitely the right call. While I wouldn't say that it feels aggressive, it definitely does feel more performance orientated. Now, actually, I do think this bike for me, currently, I would need to play around a little bit with the fit. Personally, I think actually the reach is a bit too long for me. Either I need a shorter stem by about 10mm, or I just need to play around with kind of the angle of the bars and the positioning of the hoods. But at the moment, it's just not quite right. However, that being said, the kind of stack of the head tube, it doesn't feel low. If anything, it probably just goes to show that the previous version of the Defy was actually quite high. I think comparing this bike to, say, the Pinarello X3, which I've also been riding recently, and the Trek de Marne, I'd say they all feel kind of much of a muchness, and I think they're all designed to do a similar thing, which is very much be in that performance endurance end of the market, as opposed to, say, the new Roubaix or the new Canyon Endurace, which sit more within the all-road category. Next, though, I think let's chat about the compliance itself. I mean, obviously, geometry and compliance kind of they hold hands, as it were. But I think with the compliance, those 32 CY tyres definitely do the bulk of the heavy lifting, as you'd expect. But one thing that I have noticed is you really can feel that seat post flex. You really can feel it provide you with some comfort, because you can feel road chatter through the pedals, but you don't get that same feeling and feedback through the saddle, which is really nice. So it's really refreshing. It's really enjoyable to actually feel that in motion, but at the same time, not feel the drop in stiffness when you're putting down power. So yeah, that's been really enjoyable to experience. I think next up, though, handling, because obviously there is a new handlebar and a new stem. The shape of the handlebars is really nice, even though it's designed to provide compliance. I actually find that it just feels really nice in the hands as well. So that's really cool. I think the handling itself, obviously it's an endurance bike still, so it's not going to feel as direct as or as pointy as a racy road bike. I'd say that it's that happy blend between something that has purpose, but still has... It's still a relaxed ride at the end of the day. So while I won't say that it feels super dynamic, I think it's kind of pulling upon two strings, one being trying to be as performance orientated as it possibly can be, while still being an endurance bike. As you can see, the bike behind me, the one that I have been riding, is the top of the range version of the bike with the Cadex wheels and the SRAM Red group set. I think, to be brutally honest, it does just remind me of why I'm not the biggest SRAM Red fan. I would have loved to have had this bike in a Dura-Race spec, but that's personal preference. You may disagree. But those wheels, I've been absolutely loving. I think they're a perfect match for wider tyres because they help just, you know, make them sit nice and plump, which is great. And they are super light as well, so it is making the bike feel quite reactive when going uphill. However, it has also confirmed to me that I probably wouldn't go for this top-end spec bike. I really genuinely would go for one of the Advanced Pros, and probably the Ultegra Di2 version. I just think this is too much. I think the spec outdoes the bike. I think finding one of those mid-range bikes is actually the perfect specification for this frame. While the wheels are really nice, just don't think they're worth the money. I don't think they're worth the extra money as opposed to one of the kind of the better value spec options. It's tough because they are beautiful wheels, but I just, maybe for this bike, maybe they don't make the most amount of sense to me anyway. Other people may disagree. So there we have it. That is the brand new 2024 Giant Defy. Let me know down in the comments, what do you make of this new bike and which spec level would you go for? If you enjoyed the video, then please do drop it a like, subscribe to the channel for more content, and I will see you again very soon.